The Newsline.
Hello and welcome back to Newsline, brought to you by People STV. In today's commentary, we turn our focus to Syria, one of the key players in the complex landscape of international geopolitics. Approximately 90% of Syria's population is Muslim, similar to most Middle Eastern nations. Among them, around 74% to 78% are Sunni Muslims. The remaining 10% of the population consists of minorities such as Druze and Christians, who continue to play a significant role in shaping the country's social and cultural identity. Following the outbreak of the Syrian civil war in 2011, the country's Christian population declined dramatically, from approximately 2.2 million to less than 1 million. For decades, Syria had been ruled by the Assad family regime. However, after the regime's downfall, Ahmed Al-Sharaa rose to power through a rebellion. His rise initially gave hope to the nation's minorities, who believed the violence and persecution they faced would finally come to an end. Unfortunately, those hopes were short-lived, as atrocities against minorities have only intensified since then. Unfortunately, Al-Sharaa is a former terrorist who now serves as an interim leader, self-proclaimed as the president of Syria. Despite never being elected through a democratic process, he portrays himself as the savior of the Syrian people. As he rose to power, several regional power blocs sought to gain influence over him. Among them, Iran and Russia were the most prominent, given Syria's strategic importance to their geopolitical ambitions. Historically, Syria has been a central hub for supplying terrorist groups, particularly Iran-backed Hezbollah, with weapons smuggled through its territory. This long-standing collaboration explains why Syria continues to align closely with both Iran and Russia. After the collapse of the Assad regime and the rise of al-Sharaa, even Western nations, including the United States, made efforts to win him over. When President Trump visited Qatar, a special meeting was arranged with al-Sharaa, the former terrorist who had seized power through violence. Several Western leaders expressed interest in meeting him, and even the Secretary General of the United Nations held a personal meeting with him. Ironically, the United States had once placed a bounty on his head, yet later adopted a more conciliatory stance. President Trump went as far as inviting him to the White House. Israel grew optimistic, believing that al-Sharaa's leadership might pave the way for the restoration of diplomatic relations between the two nations. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee even predicted that Syria would soon join the Abraham Accords. Al-Sharaa appears intent on building healthy international relationships. However, he shows little interest in fostering the same harmony with the minorities living under his governance. His government has been particularly harsh toward the Druze and Christian communities in Syria. Reports revealed that the atrocities against these groups were carried out by armed factions allied with al-Sharaa. These revelations ultimately prompted Israel to take decisive military action, launching airstrikes against targets in Syria. Frankly speaking, within just a few months, Syria began to resemble another Gaza, compelling the state of Israel to intervene militarily. In response to escalating threats and attacks, Israel launched a series of heavy airstrikes on Syrian territory, going so far as to target and bomb the Syrian army headquarters. In this context, al-Sharaa is attempting to present himself as a democratically elected president. He may have shed the attire of a rebellious combatant and donned a polished suit, but it is clear that the man known to the world as al-Sharaa has not truly changed, only his mask has. Syria once witnessed public executions under his influence, yet he now strives to portray himself as a legitimate, democratic leader. At the time of this recording, he is already touring Russia, meeting with President Vladimir Putin, where he received the highest honors typically reserved for a state leader. Interestingly, Bashar al-Assad, who fled Syria in the wake of al-Sharaa's takeover, is now a political refugee in Russia, while Putin has received al-Sharaa as a diplomatic guest. Although this may seem confusing, or even like a dark joke, it reflects the unpredictable nature of geopolitics. The situation demands serious attention. Despite the heavy security surrounding Assad, he was hospitalized in critical condition after being poisoned, and this was not the first such incident. While Assad did not directly accuse Russia, just days after his recovery, Putin extended an invitation to al-Sharaa to visit Russia. Earlier, we observed al-Sharaa requesting that Russia hand over Assad. Had Russia complied, al-Sharaa's regime might have executed the former dictator. While the situation is complex, it leads directly to the next point. The video footage on your screen was released by a terrorist group called Syria Ansar al-Sunnah, operating within Syrian territory. In the footage, the group threatens suicide bombings and car bomb attacks targeting Christians and Alawite communities. This is the stark reality on the ground in Syria. Under al-Sharaa's administration, such terrorist groups have been allowed to operate with relative freedom. This is the kind of leader, a former rebel and terrorist, whom the Western world has chosen to embrace. Since Al-Shara's rise to power, there have been mass killings, particularly targeting the Druze community, and suicide bomb attacks on churches. The terrorist group featured in the footage continues to issue threats, highlighting the persistent danger faced by minorities under his rule. Remarkably, no country in the world has banned Al-Sharaa from entering, allowing him to travel internationally without restrictions. He faces no cases at the International Criminal Court. In contrast, arrest warrants have been issued against Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of what is widely regarded as the true democracy in the Middle East. This stark contrast highlights the inconsistencies and political biases that often shape international justice and diplomatic norms. As highlighted earlier, millions of people have lost their lives in wars. In the 3 years since it began, the Russia-Ukraine war has claimed around 500,000 lives. In contrast, the Israel-Hamas conflict, ongoing for 2 years since the October 7th massacre, has resulted in approximately 70,000 reported deaths. Every human life is invaluable and sacred, whether it is one or thousands. These figures underscore how seriously the State of Israel prioritizes the protection of its citizens, consistently reporting some of the lowest casualties in modern warfare. Yet, despite this, much of the media remains intent on demonizing Israel while glorifying Hamas. Unfortunately, the same media and international community remain largely silent about the ongoing atrocities in Syria. Meanwhile, Iran initially made significant efforts to win over Al-Sharaa. However, it later took a step back upon realizing that Al-Sharaa is increasingly aligned with the West. Despite this, he is now visiting Russia, a close ally of Iran, highlighting the complex and shifting dynamics of geopolitical alliances. If this report helped you see the situation on the ground clearly, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to People's TV, where truth has no agenda, and facts speak louder than spin.
Subscribe us for more details.